I'm working on one of my newest children's books is about Abraham Lincoln. I am just in the research aspect of it. Does anybody have one of those plants?
Oh, yes, plant.
And so I brought just a quick online still photo of Abraham Lincoln. And I'm just going to use this as a demonstration purpose of creating out of black and white reference fairly believable, realistic skin tones using this very limited palette. Starting, drawing the four things of every successful painting, illustration-wise too. And I teach this to my students all the time. There are only 4 different things that you can really use as a way to analyze your work that'll make a successful painting. First is drawing. Drawing is always primary importance. If it's not drawn well, it's just not drawn well. You can't save it. Number 2 will be values. If the values are correct, like I said earlier, it's going to look real. It's going to turn. It's going to have volume. Number 3 will be the color. Is the color correct? And then number 4 will be edges. And edges are one of those real tricky things. I know we want to paint that super sharp edge that we see in photography sometimes because it's there. And sometimes an edge is important because the edge will bring things forward. But sometimes we want to turn the surface. And we have to learn to purposely make edges soft. Contrast is probably the greatest and easiest trick to use. The contrast between dark and light. Also put that contrast between hard edges and soft edges too. Or between warm and cool. So contrast is one of those elements that are used as a trick to bring the viewer into whatever it is you want to look at quickly. And so as soon as you know those, it just makes the drawing and painting so much easier. Usually when I'm painting, one of the things I always tell my students, let the gesture be important in the beginning and just use the gesture as nothing more than compositional placement tool. I like to block the color's ends and leave those edges unfinished at this point just yet. I'm just quickly trying to get values established. Again, working from darks to lights. One of the things as a painter, as a picture maker, as an artist, I really try to stress with all my students also is that every stage of a painting should be complete. It should look good at every stage that you're creating it. And that means so that if you stopped and stepped away, it would be at least aesthetically pleasing at that stage. Again, just knowing I've painted so much from life that the skin around the eyes tends to be cooler looking, and it's because it's thinner. There are more blood vessels directly close to that, so you're seeing through that translucent skin around the bony protuberance or whatever. The cheeks and the nose tend to be redder and warmer, and so that's one of those kind of things that we're always trying to emphasize. Those are just general rules. They're not perfect rules, but they're general rules. And especially when you're working as an illustrator for black and white reference, keeping those things in mind. The palette I'm using is white, yellow ochre, cadmium red, and black.
Okay.
No blue.
Cadmium red light?
No
Cadmium
blue.
red medium.
No blue.
No blue.
Cadmium red medium.
Yeah. I showed them another palette that I was using for just my temperature palette. It's very limited. It's just white, burnt sienna,
How do you
and
get the
ultramarine
gray
blue.
then?
Gray is just by adding between whites and the blacks and going.
But you have
from
black
there.
on your palette.
Yeah,
That's
black.
what I
Yeah.
couldn't see it from here.
No blue because, and it creates a visual blue in a sense. It's not a real blue, but
Gotcha.
it creates that illusion of blue. One of my favorite colors is transparent oxide red. I don't know if you guys have used it or not yet.
Yep.
It's made by a number of different manufacturers. My favorite is probably Rembrandt. I like the transparent oxide red just because by itself can make a really strong, just with white alone, it can make a really nice skin tone. With just a little bit of yellow, it can make an even warmer skin tone. But when it's mixed with white, it has a very translucent kind of quality about it that skin has naturally, so it's one of the reasons I like it. Now, to say just a little bit about brushes, I really like a lot of the hog hair bristles, mostly because they seem to hold on to the paint and let go of the paint pretty well. A synthetic brush tends to just want to be like a palette knife. It's like a palette knife with lots of little heads. It just wants to get rid of the paint. It's nice to push the paint around with. Again, you'll find what you like from using it most.
How long were you able to use a brush with your oils, and how do you care for it?
Well, I use ivory soap to clean up with. And I use these brushes forever. Literally, they're not good for details maybe after a while, but then they're good for specialized purposes elsewhere. Sometimes I'll always keep a soft brush, and maybe it's got to be dry, and I want to just soften an edge, maybe around a nose or an eye. While I'm looking through one of my clean brushes, I want something that's going to be slightly splayed out. That wouldn't be a good brush for detail anymore, but it'll be nice now as a little blender. And then I just keep those around. So every brush gets used until it's literally so stiff or a rock or there's nothing left that it can't be used for. This is where it really comes in handy, painting from dark to light. You're trying to paint around that highlight with the dark, it's almost inevitably going to go muddy. But if I paint through the dark with a lighter value, I can really help build those highlights to make it much more believable. Just the opposite of what you guys are just doing with watercolor.
Yeah, and for me, if you put the darks in first, it's the shadows that kind of create the structure.
It is. It's exactly what they are. They're like a foundation for
Yeah,
the
like
scene.
the foundation of the painting that you build upon.
I would get this pretty close to what most people would think would be finished today. And then from there, I would determine what needs to be brought out or taken back. And I might even scrape some of it again with a second skin.
Just so that way you can still get that energy.
Exactly. For that reason alone, so I can put that energy back into it. And I would oil it. Make sure it's got to be completely dry, but then I would oil the painting so that I have that illusion that I'm painting back into wet again.
Oh.
There, I feel a little more comfortable with that. But before I leave also, if I were going to do the background of some sort, what do I want to focus on? I don't want my background in this case being lighter than my head. So I'd probably make the background go back somewhat and go maybe in this warm gray. This is an abstract painting. When I paint something as realistic as I can, it's still an abstract painting. When you think about it, it's nothing more than goop squeezed out of a tube, and with magic, because it really does kind of look like magic, create the illusion that it's three-dimensional. And it's just an illusion, so it's a magic trick. So learning to use your materials to create that magic trick, and sometimes you have to purposely, even in reality-wise, hair, for instance, is one of those things. Hair has a softness to it, so why would you paint hair with every perfect hair just absolutely in focus? Then it wants to come forward. It doesn't lay down. It doesn't look like hair anymore. So those are kind of images for soft edges. One of the ways you want to turn a face is you want to bring some of that background color into the shadows and then let that edge fall off. And it'll turn the face as if it's going into the distance, or any outside edge, any turning edge, unless there's a strong rim light. And that rim light will be a hard edge that you use for a purpose to bring it forward again. So you have to learn these tricks, and at the same time, there are rules, and they're always broken. So I can't just tell you, you always have to do this, because in every painting, you have a different focal point, you have a different story, a different narrative, and you're trying to bring the viewer, whoever it is, into that particular aspect of the painting. And don't worry if you don't get the drawing right. I'm adjusting all the time. I always adjust. I'm pushing and pulling. I'm pushing out edge. I'm coming back and erasing and taking things away. It's just part of the process. Especially for students, you got to realize it's okay. Once you put a mark down, that mark is only good because you're using it to measure against another mark. and then back and forth. You're going to move sometimes whole planes over again. It's just part of the process. I like painting without drawing, kind of the alla prima method in the beginning, just because it's fun, to be honest with you. But a lot of my finished paintings are always done with a finished sketch, especially when I'm working with illustration clients. And that's because every stage has had to be approved at the whole process. So they've approved every stage of the painting, which kind of takes out a lot of the excitement. So as a painter, you have to try to find that again, mostly through your application.